Thank you, Chairman Watson. That concludes the Fisheries Committee. Moving on to the Government Relations Committee. Chairman, Ms. Jamie Woodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I would like to welcome Chris Richardson up for a legislative update, but just to say that I think that this has been an incredibly successful year. I know that Representative Holt is probably the most excited person in the room that the General Assembly has recessed for the year. Second only to probably everybody else in the room. But it was a very fast-paced but productive session, and I personally appreciated the increasingly positive relationship that members of this commission and agency have with longtime members of the General Assembly, but also new members as we build and grow relationships. And that comes as a result of a lot of hard work, and I very much appreciate Chris Richardson's leadership in that effort, and all of the agency team members who've come in and answered tough questions on tough issues and been very responsive. Director Carter, to the members of the General Assembly they answer to their constituents, and we try to make sure that we're quick to answer their questions and their constituents' questions, and I really appreciate every member of this commission for taking that role and that growing role very seriously. Chris?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission.
Chris, just 1 minute before you get started. I like the seersucker suit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it very much. As Chairman Woodson alluded to, it has been an exciting week in that the 109th General Assembly has adjourned until January of 2016. I will have a much more in-depth report for you at the next commission meeting, when I can have a little bit of time to go through all the legislation that did pass, that didn't pass. Hopefully I'll have a written report that you can really take a look at and delve into these. But I can tell you just in general terms, when we started the legislative session, we were dealing with a number of pieces of legislation that would have directly impacted the agency. Some we were in favor of, and others we weren't. And on the whole, everything that we wanted to pass this year has been sent to the governor's desk. Our legislation relative to the reinvestment of some of our endowment funds should become law upon the governor's signature. We passed significant legislation relative to big game animals in the form of a restitution bill that will increase the penalties relative to illegally taking big game animals. There was a bill that clarified some issues relative to the taking of wildlife in self-defense that we worked very closely with the sponsors on and came out with a good piece of legislation. We also dealt with legislation that we weren't in support of. We dealt with legislation relative to wild hogs. That issue, while it passed the Senate committee, did not come out of the House committee, so it effectively was killed for the year. So in general terms, it has been a very successful session. It's been a very quick one, but I think as far as the TWRA and the agency is concerned, it went very well. I did also want to report to you on the Sportsman's Caucus event that the agency was a big part of at the legislature. Ron Lawler and Representative Lawler and Senator Mike Bell hosted the event for us. That was sponsored by the foundation. We had members of the commission there, and we actually started with 300 plates and ran out of plates. So we served a lot of people at that event. It was very well attended, and I want to publicly extend a big thank you not only to the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Foundation, but also to our law enforcement officers that came and helped and participated in cooking and serving that event. Cape Taylor, Darren Ryder, and Glenn Moats came from the Nashville office, and then a number of members of the Officers Association, which Joe Campbell's the president of, came and really the event would not have been able to happen without them. So a big thank you to them. And as I said before, I'll have a more in-depth report for you at the next commission meeting. With that, Madam Chairman, I'll answer any questions the commission has.
Thanks. Any questions for members of the commission? All right. Well, thank you again, Chris, and to all of the team at the agency. It's been a very good year, and I think we're continuing to build very productive relationships with our partners in the General Assembly, and I personally appreciate it, and I know every member of this commission does.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, Madam Chairman, I would be remiss to say that this commission and the time that they put into those relationships and the day that you all spent on the Hill Without the support of a commission, and a commission that takes the approach that you all have when it comes to the relationship building in the legislature, none of that would be possible. So a big round of thanks to you all for the time and effort that you put in.
Thanks, Chris. Director Carter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to take a second, since Chris was just here, to thank him publicly. I know you all know what he does as our liaison with the legislature, but I bet not everybody knows the amount of time, and it is a significant amount of time that he invests. And from all the accounts I get back from the members of the legislature, he does a really good job for us, and I think the relationships are good. I also want to thank our folks when Chris calls and goes through, especially our legal staff, and says, we have a question to answer. We want to make absolutely sure that we're giving the best information we can and it's factual. We don't ever want to leave that idea that we just threw something together. So there's a lot of time invested, but Chris has been the face of the agency down there, and Representative Holt and others. I just appreciate the way y'all have worked with us to bring together those ideas that were thrown out and eventually get them down to something that everybody worked with. So thank you for that. And I just want to mention Chris and thank him publicly for all he did.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chris. Excellent. That's our report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Woodson. Moving on to the Budget Committee, Chairman Harold Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Committee recognizes Ken Tarkenton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your book should be a two-page report, financial report. I'm reporting through the month of February 2015. At the top of the page, the boating fund is identified. We're approximately 6%, 6.1% behind the actual amount from the prior year. Up until February, it appeared to be new boat sales were down. In February, it was not only new boat, but renewals also. Perhaps with March and April, we'll see that pick up. The expenses are 46% of the allotment for the year. In the middle of the page, the wildlife fund is approximately 1.7% above the estimation, the projection for the fiscal year, and the expenses are approximately 49% of the year. Senior citizens license sales for the month are 734. At the bottom of the page, the watchable and the lifetime endowment accounts are identified. We have approximately $7,400 that is able to be transferred from the endowment, watchable endowment, to the wildlife fund, and the sportsman fund has a balance of $39 million, almost $500,000. On the second page, the wetlands accounts are detailed. At the top of the page, the acquisition fund has approximately $16.2 million balance as of the month of February. We've zeroed the maintenance account out as we usually do, and the compensation, or the in lieu of tax fund, has approximately $824,000 as a balance. Any questions or comments?
Ken, I understand that the interest rate on our endowments has really soared in the past 30 to 60 days to what, 0.08% now? Is that, Barry, am I in the ballpark of the number?
0.1%.
0.1%. Nice try, Barry. I wish. So,
It was actually 0.11% the month before. So, but we're hanging in there at 0.1. Yes, sir.
when we get to 1%, I'll buy everybody a milkshake personally, but I'm not real excited about the 0.1 right now.
I understand, sir.
Thank you so much. Any
Yes, sir.
questions from the commission or the audience?
I've got one, Mr. Chairman. What, the legislation that the treasurer supported for us, Chris, I meant to ask you that, and I didn't think about it till now. That passed, I suppose, to allow us to for him to make some different investments?
It did.
And I know you hadn't had time to meet and all that, but I guess y'all will schedule whoever, the finance people, y'all will schedule that pretty quickly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One key point in this, just for the public's clarification, you hear a lot of dollars in these endowments, 39.5 million, I believe, in one of the endowments alone. That's not our money to spend. It's an endowment. We are allowed to spend a portion, and there's even restrictions on that portion that we may spend the interest off of. I think there's some misconception we are loaded with money. From one perspective, yes, in the endowments we are. From the other perspective, is that money good for us to spend day in, day out? Absolutely not. And it's particularly sad when these funds were drawing 8 to 9% just a few years ago. It made a heck of a difference, and that again is why we had the recommendations for some of the fee increases. Ken, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Cannon. Director Carter, do you have any announcements?
Just take 1 second, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things, just a reminder, yesterday we spent the entire meeting going primarily over the season setting recommendations that will be coming up in May. And just as a reminder that will transfer into no action was actually taken other than proclaiming the wildlife management areas. All the season setting recommendations and rules and regulations that go with hunting will take place at the May meeting, which is May 21st and 22nd in Nashville. So the other thing, I'm not sure, y'all know the story on our senior citizens license and what we went through for 3 years in our appeal process with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I told you that we had sent back in our recommendation to them, and they had given us a 5-year time period that they would allow us to count part of those licenses, which we thought was not where we needed to be, so we appealed that, and long story short, we finally got it in writing since our last commission meeting that we were actually we'll get to count those licenses for 6 years as opposed to 5, and that going forward, they've okayed the plan that we put together and that the General Assembly blessed through the legislation that we did to rework the licenses. And so just want to know that, ending on a good note there, that's a blessing that will help us for the next 6 years for sure.
Thank you, Director Carter. Any other comments from the commission? Any comments from the audience? Representative Holt.
Thank you very much. Andy Holt from the 76th District, State House District, all of Weekly, portions of Carroll and Obion County. I want to say, first off, I apologize. This is the first meeting I've ever attended. But in apologizing, I want to tell you that there's a tangible difference that the Tennessee General Assembly recognizes from the commission, also from the director. Over the last several years, we've seen ebbs and flows of the relationship of the General Assembly with the commission, and I can tell you that right now it's as positive as I've ever seen it from my perspective, and I appreciate the responsiveness that the commission has given us. Also appreciate Chris Richardson. Chris has done an outstanding job. You all have selected a very good replacement for Nat. After Nat left, a lot of folks said nobody can fill those shoes, but you found somebody who could. And in case you all don't know it, the best thing about Chris is his sweet little wife, who's also in Nashville a lot. I've actually asked him to start sending TWRA requests through her as well into my office. But Chris really is doing you a great job. Apart from my apologies, I want to say a special word of thank you. Thank you for the way that you've treated Carroll County today and the way that you've further entrusted us as folks in Carroll County with the resources that you all have available. And I promise it will not ever go unnoticed from my perspective. And as the vice chair of the Ag Natural Resources Committee, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to help refine and critique sometimes some of the things that you all have. We recognize in the General Assembly, as well as in any legislative branch, that all of us have special interests. You all obviously have wildlife and natural resources as a special interest, and I do too. And although sometimes we don't see eye to eye on everything, I can pledge to you that I'm going to try to work with you as much as possible. And as Chris talked about, refine some of these things where we can all come to an agreement on these. So my apologies. Thank you. Appreciate the working relationship that we have together. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, you guys know how to get in touch with me, or you have people that can. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Representative Holt. We really appreciate you. I want to say a personal thank you to everybody in West Tennessee. Y'all are very gracious hosts. Y'all know how to treat people, so that's all I need to say. But anybody else from the audience want to comment? If not, oh, I'm sorry. Sir? Please step to the microphone and state your name and.
Let me say it's a privilege to be here this morning. I appreciate Mr. Cox inviting me here to talk to you about something that's really bothered me. And I appreciate y'all answering with starting your meeting off with prayer this morning. Some 18, 20 years ago, legalized a 1-inch mesh net. And my brother and I tried to get the small rivers, like Hatchet River, exempt from that. Excuse my allergy this morning. But anyway, they were going to run a bunch of tests on the fish and just see if the river could support it. Well, it drug on for 4 or 5 years, and I never did hear but one test they ran, and it didn't turn out very good for them, and I reckon they just dropped it. But the Hatchet River is just dead with catfish. I mean, there's not literally, there's no fish there. They've been taken out. When that net was legalized, I saw those guys come out there with half boatloads of fish, and I said, "You fellas are running the fishing down here." And they said, "Well, we're not doing anything illegal." And they weren't. I don't have any problem with a commercial fisherman, but those 1-inch mesh nets and smaller are just devastating to the fishery. And when they went year-round with it, it just killed Hatchet River. You can fish 15 miles of the river and you can't get a bite in it. So I'm 77-year-old and I've been fishing it for 70 years, and I just hate to see it run. I'm up here. I hadn't got many years left. I know that. But I'm up here for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren and the other sportsmen that try to get out there and catch fish. When you go to the river and spend $30 or $40 to drive to Tennessee River or to fish, and you catch 2 or 3 fish, that's just not worth going. And I talked to Mr. Eric about this. He said that I asked him why did you do it, and he said that you had like 3,000 commercial fishermen licensed sold in the state of Tennessee, and it was down to 300, and they wanted to try to raise the license back up. And I don't think there's a sportsman in Tennessee that would say anything about giving $1 more to have it where they could catch a mess of fish, and not spend $40 to go to the river and not catch nothing. So my plea is that you will reconsider on that, especially the year-round fishing, and it's devastating to the fishery. It really is, and I know for a fact it is. I don't have no doctor's degree or master's degree in college, but I've got 70 years of experience, and I know what's happened to our rivers. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Sir, would you please state your name?
Howard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My name's Howard Jeter. I live about a mile off the Hatchet River north of Bolivar.
Thank you, sir. We really appreciate your concern for our resources, and I'm assuming that's a commercial fishing issue, and we visit that in August, so it will definitely be noted and taken into consideration. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? All right. Our next commission meeting is May 21st and 22nd in Nashville. And if that's it, we stand adjourned until then. Thank you.